We'd been married for 10 years, and just the other night, on Monday, we were sitting together at the kitchen table. My wife, Sandy, I usually call her Sandy, had prepared a simple dinner. The skillet was bubbling and beeping on the stove as she served it up. Nothing fancy, but she made it just the way I like it. She'd added some cauliflower cheese on the side, nice and crispy, and there was leftover roast beef from the night before along with a few pickles. She even brought me a pint of my favorite beer. I thought, well, maybe the occasional strong beer on a work night isn't such a big deal, but I had this sense that something wasn't quite right. I've known Sandy for about 14 years now, and I've learned to recognize when something's coming up that I probably won't like, that something was starting to take shape, as expected. It happened a few days later, on Friday night, when she casually dropped the bombshell. I'm going on a date with one of the guys from work. My initial reaction was a mix of confusion and disbelief. Before you get too excited, she quickly added, "It's just dinner. There's no sex involved. So you can put that idea out of your head." Honestly, I wasn't expecting anything like that, but at the same time, I could tell this wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. I tried to act calm on the outside, but inside, I was seething. It felt like she was searching for excitement somewhere else, and I was left feeling neglected. Everything had been getting a little too routine for my liking, and it seemed like she was trying to find something for herself. I suppose it's understandable that I'd feel this way, but part of me couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't entirely my fault. "Things have been fine, right?" I said, trying to make my point. "We went to the Red Lion for dinner and dancing just last week, and last Friday, we even won the pub quiz and celebrated with champagne. That's us having fun together." But she wasn't having it. "I want something for myself," she said, almost like she was justifying what she was doing. "And believe me, there's no sex involved. It's just dinner." Then she told me it was Jonathan, someone from her office. He had been asking her out for weeks, but she'd always turned him down before. This time, though, he had insisted it would be just dinner, and she had agreed. I knew who Jonathan was. She'd mentioned him a few months ago, but then she stopped bringing him up, so I didn't think much of it. But one day, I stopped by her office to drop off some lunch she'd forgotten, and there he was. From the moment I saw him, something about him rubbed me the wrong way. He was one of those ingratiating types, always trying to be too friendly. The more I thought about it, the more I disliked him. So, when Sandy told me she was going out with him, I couldn't just let it slide. I told her, "I don't want you to go, but if you do, it's your choice. But I'm warning you, I don't trust him, and I don't believe you when you say there's no sex involved." I was upset, but I tried to keep my feelings in check. That night, the atmosphere in the house was cold, and the next 2 days felt just as distant. On Wednesday, she came home late with groceries. As she unpacked, I noticed something odd. There were 2 bags with handles sticking out, and she seemed to be trying to hide one inside the other. It didn't sit well with me, so I watched her more closely. As she cooked dinner, I took the opportunity to go shower and decided to peek into a far corner of her closet. To my surprise, I found a bag containing a satin blue dress and a new pair of stockings. I couldn't take the bag out without giving away what I'd found, but the discovery made me suspicious. Was it a surprise for me? I doubted it. On Thursday, I left for work at the usual time, but then I called in sick. I had things to think about, and I didn't want to face her while she was preparing for her date. That night, she told me that they'd be leaving early on Friday, so she'd probably be gone by the time I got home from work. I guess she didn't want me to see her in that new dress. I hadn't expected things to escalate this quickly, but I couldn't ignore what was going on. I decided to confront her sooner than I planned. By the time Friday came around, I was already upset. I tried to reason with her, telling her, "Where are you going on your date?" She responded defensively, saying, "I'm not telling you. You'll just show up and ruin it." At that point, I felt the anger building. I told her, "You need to think about what you're doing. Going on a date with another man, not your husband, and you're not even telling me where you're going. I won't stand for it. If you leave, I'll throw you out on the street." She was stunned. "You won't do that," she said, trying to convince me. "You love me." "I do love you," I replied. "But do you want to test that? Because I won't stand by and let this happen. You think your company's morality policy will protect you? I'll find out if you want, but I think you'll be the one who ends up fired. Do you want to risk it? Because if you go out with him, I won't be here when you get back. Sex or no sex." I could tell it bothered her. The next few days were awkward, especially when she came to bed that night. Things felt colder between us than ever before. The tension was palpable, and I could hardly stand to be around her. I left for work early the next morning to avoid facing her. But when I returned home, there was something waiting for me. Her car was parked outside, and as I went inside, I didn't make my presence known immediately. I waited for about 15 minutes. The sound of the shower stopped, and then I heard her walking upstairs. I followed quietly, but when I reached the bedroom, I froze. She was standing there in that satin dress, looking at me, waiting for my reaction. I wasn't sure what to think or what to do next. In the narrative, the speaker is dealing with a painful, intense situation involving his partner, Sandra, and another man named Jonathan. The story revolves around a complex emotional confrontation that leads to the end of their relationship. The speaker feels betrayed by Sandra, especially because of her actions and appearance, which he perceives as disrespectful to their relationship. He mentions her going out dressed provocatively, which he believes is inappropriate and disrespectful. He confronts her about buying a new dress and using their joint account, which he feels is being misused for her to dress up for someone else. As the situation unfolds, it becomes clear that Sandra is more interested in something different and exciting, which she believes Jonathan offers her. The speaker, hurt by this, gives her an ultimatum. If she steps out the door, their relationship is over. When Jonathan arrives, Sandra ultimately decides to leave with him, though the speaker doesn't let her go without making his feelings known. He hands her divorce papers and his wedding ring, symbolizing the end of their marriage. He also implies that Jonathan is now taking over their relationship, telling him to pass the divorce papers to Sandra after they are done together. The speaker's actions are decisive and final as he begins to take steps toward a new life. He takes down the for sale sign of the house that had been placed earlier, signaling his intent to move on. Sandra, overwhelmed by emotion, is left crying, but the speaker remains resolute. He leaves the house with his belongings, intending to return later for the rest. Before leaving, he tells Sandra that he will not wait for her to lose her way, as he believes her choices, especially the way she dresses for work, are a sign of her lack of respect for him. He offers to help her find a new place to live, showing that he is ready to move on. He doesn't look back as he drives away, closing that chapter of his life. The story concludes with a reflection on the speaker's decision to end the relationship and his willingness to move forward, even though it was painful. The story also implies that the speaker is no longer interested in seeking loyalty from Sandra or waiting for her to change. The message is one of finality, moving on, and taking control of one's future despite the emotional turmoil involved.